Namaste, Shailaja Menon. Welcome to your room. Yes. So, like we usually do, I will hand over the mic to Vidyaji to give a brief introduction, and after the introduction, we can continue with the program. Vidyaji.
Namaste and a very good morning to all. It's with pleasure that I introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Shailaja Menon. Shailaja ji, who originally hails from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, is a speaker, an author, a TV host, a philanthropist, and above all, a committed, dedicated yoga teacher with 22 years of teaching experience in the field of yoga. Based in Malaysia, Shailaja ji is the founder of Mat and Beyond Yoga Studio in Selangor, Malaysia. She was also a host in the yoga TV series Yoga Shakti on Anand TV, which is based in UK, having audiences from all over Europe, North America, and Canada. Shailaja ji conducts online asana, pranayama, and dhyana classes, workshops, and retreats for students from UK, USA, and India, as well as corporate yoga classes on stress management. She is a passionate advocate of mental wellness through yoga and seeks to share the philosophy of yoga, which she believes is important while dealing with one's mind, coupled with proper nutrition and necessary movements. And because of this belief, Shailaja ji herself, a regular hiker, encourages groups in her studio to take up proper dieting and hiking. In 2018, along with her students, Shailaja ji climbed Mount Kinabalu, the highest peak in Southeast Asia. Being a prolific speaker, Shailaja ji has been invited to speak at different organizations and institutions all over Malaysia and India. Most recently, in March 2023, in conjunction with India presidency of the G20, Shailaja ji was invited by the United Consciousness Global to represent Malaysia to promote yoga, where United Consciousness Global has been officially entrusted with the responsibility of being the C20 International Coordinator for Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, One Earth, One Family, One Future. Shailaja ji, along with all the above mentioned credentials, is also an author. She has been writing for the last 20 years and was the editor of Joint Efforts, a magazine on arthritis published by Arthritis Foundation, Malaysia. She has also been a freelance writer and a yoga columnist in several leading magazines in Malaysia. Shailaja ji has also authored a book, Yoga Shakti, Awaken Your Own Power, which was published in May 2018. In this book, Shailaja ji, using her personal experience as a driving force, explains the origins of Manasa Yoga in such a way that even a layman can understand and practice. She has discussed how negative feelings causes one to lose power in one's life and how yoga can help one regain this power and achieve self-realization. In 2022, on International Yoga Day, this book was named as one of the 4 recommended reads on yoga by the Oxford Bookstore. Shailaja ji's next book, Meditation Demystified, will be published soon by Hay House, New Delhi. Shailaja ji's ability to translate the practice of yoga from mere shapes on a mat to a living, breathing philosophy and way of life is what makes her classes, writings, and perspectives so insightful. Through this, she is able to transform and elevate an individual's life at every level, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Shailaja ji, it's indeed a pleasure and an honor to have you amongst us. Thank you so much for joining us. The mic is all yours.
Thank you so much, Vidyaji. It's been a pleasure, communicating with you, and, I get to meet Raviji today as well. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Thank you so much for the honor of inviting me to your 99th session. Yeah, so good luck to all of you. And yeah, so I'll just get started. So I have prepared a small presentation because, it just helps me to, give clarity to my thoughts. So I'm going to get started with it. I'll start the screen sharing now. So yeah, this is just me. And when we say yoga, right, this is the kind of image that comes to your mind, right? So I just starting with what are the general perceptions of yoga? Yeah, the very common perceptions. So being twisted like a pretzel, I think, is the most common perspective, because whenever I tell people, right, do yoga, they're like, oh, no, I can't stretch. And, they think that this is the only thing that yoga is about, right? So then these are all the unfortunate, like I say, yoga kind of originated in the caves of the Himalayas, right? Through the contemplation and the meditation of our ancient rishis. And it has spread worldwide, right? And I think it's a matter of great pride. I have to say this, right? That our Prime Minister right, led or was part of the yoga session at the UN headquarters, a few days ago in Times Square in New York. So, I mean, I think it's a great achievement that yoga has become a global movement. But along the way, it has also, right, permutated and, different combinations and lost some of its essence. And that is what I try to share through my teachings, that while it is, good to understand that there are many variations, it's important to know the essence. Once we know the essence, then we do all of this is also fine. But we have to know the essence of what really yoga is. And, all of this yoga, to me, like right now, yoga has become so popular, but because of that, they use yoga. Yoga is just a mere word, right, which is used as a marketing tool to sell, like this is to sell beer more than anything else, right? So these are all the different things that have come up, right? And then it's not just alcohol, right? There's a stoned yoga. I mean, it's not a term I came up with. I actually saw this. And right, there is, yoga with marijuana and weed and cannabis. And all of this is happening, I'm sure, in a lot. And then there's also these, kind of variations called goat yoga. And it actually looks funny, and it's probably quite cute as well. But I really don't understand why they bring yoga into this, right? Maybe they can call it a goat stretch, because yoga is really, so much more than just having a goat on top of you. So these are some of the dangers that have come up along with the widespread popularity of yoga. Yeah, so though it has spread world over, it has also been diluted from its essence and sometimes made a mockery of as well. So what is yoga? We keep talking about real yoga, authentic yoga, essence of yoga. So we go back to the masters, right? And then when we talk about yoga, the first and primary name that comes up is Maharishi Patanjali. Yeah, and if you look at his seminal work, the Yoga Sutras, right, he very clearly gives us Ashtanga Yoga, right, where he clearly defines 8 limbs of yoga. And in many ways, these are all so interrelated. It's not just about any one thing, right? So in, like, when we talk, we say one limb has become very dominant, right? Like yoga has been equated to asana, right? Anywhere you go, you mention yoga, it's all about, okay, when you go, it's just asana. But to understand, I think this information is so important to understand that there are 8 limbs to yoga. Yeah, and that includes yamas, niyamas, asana, yes, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And all of these are equally important, as in people usually, yamas and niyamas are the least attractive, right? The most boring ones. And nobody even talks about it, right? We only want to do the asana and then have these, if we are lucky and we have a body that can stretch well, right? And we get these great Instagrammable photos, right? That's all we care about, right? So the boring stuff, we kind of leave it by the way. So yamas and niyamas is actually what they call the foundational practice of yoga. Yeah, where it is about, they give you these, ethical precepts by which to live by. And yamas is like ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, parigraha. These are all different things. Ahimsa is non-violence. Like each one, to me, is a lifetime practice. Or in the beginning, I used to think lifetime, but now I think all of this is many lifetime practice, because they're so deep, right? So when you look at, even if you just take ahimsa, right, and we look at it at a very superficial level, right, it just might seem, okay, so I don't beat up anybody, or I don't kill anybody, or I'm vegetarian and I practice ahimsa. But that's at a very superficial level. And if we look deep within, ahimsa is not just about other people, right? There is ahimsa that we do on ourselves. And if we become aware of our mental chatter and we become aware of our mental thoughts, okay, we will realize that we are actually so unkind to ourselves and so violent, in fact, in many ways to ourselves. Yeah, so there is so much of depth to just that one word, ahimsa, right? The way that we apply ahimsa to ourselves first and foremost, in the way that we think of ourselves, in the way that we speak to ourselves, in the way that we even practice yoga to ourselves. So for me, everything translates to the mat, right? So actually, to me, the mat is actually our life. And whatever we do on the mat is what we do in our everyday lives. So I see students, I mean, being a teacher, right, I have that ability or that gift of being able to watch so many people, right? And I learn through my students. So I see some people, just being so violent towards their body, right? Because it becomes about the ego, right? It is about just, achieving a certain shape that they saw in a magazine, or in their own mind, they have decided that this is what is this pose about. So all of that is again ahimsa. So even on a yoga mat, we can commit ahimsa to ourselves, right? So that is just one dimension of ahimsa to ourselves. But there is also so much of other ahimsa to the people, ahimsa to other people, to our families, to, to the universe, right? To plants, to animals, right? So even I've just talked about ahimsa, right? And there is just so much to go into, right? So similarly, like that, there is the satya, there is brahmacharya, there is a parigraha. So there's just so much depth to each of these yamas and niyamas. Yeah, and then asana doesn't require too much of talk, but I must mention it that again, when we say asana, we have equated asana to a stretch, right? So I always ask my students, what is the difference between asana and a stretch? Right? We go to the gym, right? And we see somebody striking a tree pose, right? And then you go to yoga class and somebody's also holding a tree pose, right? They tell you balance is very good for balance. So what is the difference? Is that the difference comes in the attitude, right? The mind is the key between what is a stretch and what is an asana. The awareness that we bring in, like I say, when you go to the gym, right, you can wear earplugs and listen to music or listen to podcasts, and you can exercise and you still get benefit. Yes, but that is exercise. But when we say we are doing an asana, it is so important to know what does asana involve. That it involves our mind, it involves our breath, it involves awareness, it involves mindfulness. All of this is what makes it asana. Yeah, so just merely stretching and striking a pose is not asana, right? So that is the other thing. And then pranayama, like, breathing practices. So again, when I say breathing practices, also I'm doing disservice to the word, because it is not really about the breath. Yeah. So again, all the great teachers say, if it was about the breath, then it would be shwasayama. Yeah, but it is not shwasayama, it is pranayama. So it talks about prana and talks about energy. Right. So that is what we are trying to work with. That is what we're trying to regulate through our pranayama practice. So what the greatest service we can do for yoga is really to understand the depth of each word, right? So that when we practice with full awareness of what it is that we're doing. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into each one of them. This would take forever, right? So I'll just go on to the next slide. So the key to all of this practice is awareness, right? That is what yoga builds. Yeah, so awareness is like the sun. When it shines on things, they are transformed, right? And I say this because most of us live our life in a very unconscious manner, very unaware manner, right? We are all slaves to habits and patterns. Right? We all sleep on the same side of the bed. We all wake up on the same side of the bed. We have to have that certain routine. We have to drink our coffee or drink whatever else. Even if we drive to work, we take the same route. We're in the grip of patterns, right? And it is important to be aware of patterns. Now, it's not like patterns are a bad thing, but sometimes all patterns are not helpful. And it is important to be aware of our patterns and then decide what patterns we want to go with, and decide whether the patterns that take us down, we still want to continue. Right? So awareness is the key, because without awareness, we are just unconsciously flowing with our samskaras. Yeah, and these are patterns and habits we have picked up as children. And I would go on to say, even from previous lifetimes. Right? We carry all those patterns into this lifetime. And unless we become aware of ourselves, we are unconsciously just playing them out. So that is why awareness is the key to yoga practice. And that is what yoga practice builds, right? And it begins with the body. Yeah, because first it encourages. So the first word in the Yoga Sutras is Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Yeah, so this word Atha is so important. Yeah, it is about yoga is in the present moment, or the discipline of yoga. Yeah, the present moment is the key. Because first we have to be conscious that our minds are always caught up in the past or the future. and it is never truly present. So we have to understand all this about ourselves first. We all function in a very disjointed manner, right? Our minds are in one place and our bodies are somewhere else. I always say, if we are at work, we're thinking about vacation. But when we're at vacation, we're thinking about work, right? And then when we're at office, we're like, oh, I wish I could be with my children. But your children will be right in front of you and talking, and you're thinking of something else. Right? So it is so important to understand, to see this, right? That is where the awareness comes in, right? To understand that we are never together. We are always separated, right? We function in very separated manner. If you look at our thoughts, we think something, but you would think that what you think is what you speak. No, but what we think is not what we speak, and what we speak is not what we act. Right? So even there is so much of this disjointedness, right? This lack of alignment. And they say that it is this manner of functioning, this lack of alignment in our lives that causes the stress. Yeah, so that is again my favorite topic, this concept of stress, but we're not going to go into it today, right? But one of the major causes of stress we have to recognize is this lack of alignment in our lives. Yeah, the lack of authenticity. If we all flowed, right, in a very aligned manner, then stress is minimized. It is because we're thinking something else and we're feeling something else, yet we have to say something else, right, that it causes so much conflict within us. And this conflict gives rise to stress. Yeah, so this ability to first see how, our minds are never really present, and the yoga practice encourages us to ground into the present. And how do we ground into the present? In a yoga class, in an asana practice, right? First thing we ground into is the body. So the body is the easiest thing to ground into because the body is something solid. It is tangible. We can feel it. We can move it. We can touch it, right? So it is the easiest thing to connect to, right? So even in my yoga class, when I see students first come into class, right? So even if I say right leg, left leg will go up. If I say right hand, left hand will go up, because those circuits, that body-mind circuits are not strong. Yeah, but as they keep coming, as they keep practicing, then everything, that connection between mind and body gets very strong, right? And our connection, the mind's connection to the body also gets strong. So then when I say right leg will go up, right? So that is being present. So all of that, the mind needs to be present to the body. Right? If we're thinking about, okay, what happens after this, or what is my to-do list that I have to get to after class, which are all very common thoughts, right? What happens next? That is one idea that completely smashes the present moment. And for that, we have to go back into this composition of our consciousness, right? So we have to understand that we have the mind which functions on likes and dislikes, but we also have the buddhi, yeah, which can rein in. It has the capacity to rein in the mind. Yeah, but we are such slaves to the mind, like I said at the beginning, right? We are slaves to our habits, we are slaves to our patterns, we are slaves to our likes and dislikes, right? So the buddhi is completely like inconsequential. So that is why the yoga practice, asana practice is also like a buddhi yukta practice. Yeah, where we rein in the mind, not to allow it to function on likes and dislikes, but every time it goes out, you bring it back. Right? Say, be present to the body, feel. We use the senses. Yeah. So feel the sense of touch, the hands on the mat, the feet on the mat, right? Become aware of, lifting your right leg. So like that, we harness the mind to the body. So these are all, like I said again, these are lifetime practices, right? But it's like I would say this is like an acquired taste, right? Like nobody really likes to, at least when I first came to Malaysia, tofu was not something that, I took to quite easily. But over a period of time, right, I learned to appreciate it. I think of all the good things that it has, right? So that's how even this mind liking the body and being present to the body is. Right? In the beginning, it doesn't like it, right? It just like, I just wants to think about tomorrow. It wants to worry about what may never happen, right? But then as you keep bringing it back to the body and you say, feel, enjoy that feeling of the stretch, right? Like pique its interest and curiosity in the body and the movement, right? Then slowly, the mind starts finding an enjoyment in the body, yeah, in the movement, in the rhythm of the breath. And that way, then you don't have to, I always say, you cannot force the mind, right? It's like a child. It's like the spoiled child that you have to cajole it, right? You have to kind of learn to deal with it. So you make it find something that it likes, something that interests it, something that it becomes curious about. Then interest becomes natural, right? I always say the mind, right? Something that it loves, it can keep obsessing about, constantly, right? So even if something that it dislikes also, it can obsess about constantly. So that way we have to learn to work with them like a child, right? A child doesn't like to eat vegetables, right? We cajole it, we find ways to feed it. So similarly, to me, the mind I always think of as a spoiled child, right? It just wants to do what it wants to do, right? But we have to the buddhi has to find ways to cajole the mind into doing what is good for the mind, right? Like being present. And I always say this is the underlying practice of yoga. Yeah, this focus, attention, concentration. These are key words. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the previous slide of the Yoga Sutras, right? So this will bring greater understanding why this focus is a key practice of yoga. Because I stopped at pranayama. But if you look at pratyahara, it is exactly the practice I talked to you about. It is about drawing back our attention time and time again and bringing it in. Yeah, it is a process of bringing it in. I always say when we wake up, our attention is caught with the world, right? It is with the children, it is with work, it is with traffic jam, it is with to-do lists, right? But when you step into your yoga class, from when you begin your practice, it is a constant drawing in, right? All those scattered attention, scattered energy, all of that gets drawn in. And that is the pratyahara practice. Yeah, so in the scriptures, they always give the example of a turtle, right? So the turtle, whenever it senses danger, it just withdraws its limbs under its shell, right? So similarly, we also have to develop that capacity to withdraw our senses time and time again, because otherwise, I always believe that we really get done for by our senses that we cannot control. Right. So a person who has unrestricted, desire for sweets, right, will at some point, unless they have some great genes, right, will at some point end up being diabetic and we get done for, right? So I always think if you really become very aware, right, whatever it is that we cannot control or we have no discipline over, that is what, is going to really, become our, what brings us down. So people who don't like to move or people who don't like exercise, right, will again, be felled by that, because, all of us know now that exercise is good for the body. And people who cannot sit still, right, who's the first thing people say when I tell, a meditation pranayama, oh, I cannot sit, right? But because of that, we'll always have that restlessness, right? We'll never find that peace. Yeah, so that is why we have to see what it is that we don't like to do, but understand that that is what we actually need to do. Yeah, so pratyahara is that drawing in, right? And only when we can be adept at this, only when we have a mastery over the capacity to draw our attention back time and time again, can concentration even begin to develop, right? So meditation now is such a commonly used word, right? But actually what we are practicing is pratyahara and dharana. Yeah, meditation is a far cry. That is a state, they say, the rishis say, that is not something we can do. It is a state that we receive. But dharana and pratyahara and dharana are what we have to work at. Yeah, we have to build the discipline, right? To sit, to be able to see our minds, to keep bringing our minds back time and time again, to hold our attention on something, either on the body or the breath, to build the capacity for concentration and focus. Yeah, and then with some grace, that state of meditation will dawn on us. Yeah, so that is why, as you can see, as we try to access higher states of consciousness, pratyahara and dharana are the key, right? But for this pratyahara and dharana, those earlier limbs are so important. I always say, if we're just sitting all the time and trying to, think of ways to kill each other or cheat each other or, betray each other, right? We're not really going to be able to focus. Yeah, so that is why yamas, niyamas are all important. The whole practice is a practice called antakarna shuddhi. Yeah, we have to cleanse our inner instruments. And that comes only through all of these practices, the yamas and the niyamas. Okay, so focus, now we understand why focus is the underlying practice. So whether we're doing asana, whether we're doing pranayama, it's all about focus. Okay, and then, so, people talk about letting go all the time, let go, let go. So we actually can't let anything go, because the more we want to let something go, the more it takes over our minds, right? So we get consumed by the same thing we want to let go. But the practice is the earlier 2 slides. The practice is attention, the capacity to direct our attention, to focus our attention and hold it, either on the body, on the breath, on a mantra, on an elevating phrase. That is the practice. And the more focus that we are on something, everything else naturally falls away. Letting go becomes a very organic process. We don't have to let anything go. We just have to work on focus. Yeah, and then naturally everything that is not desirable is just pushed to the background, right? So this practice is what brings about the shift, right? So I was talking about this earlier, right? This is how our minds are every day, right? Mindful, right? Full of stuff. But the journey is from this mindful to shift, right? To becoming conscious. So the other mindful is conscious, aware, right? And that is the journey of the yoga practice. Yeah, so this again is emphasized in many scriptures, right? So earlier we talked about the Yoga Sutras, and this is Sage Vyasa. He talks about the Chitta Bhumis, yeah, the 5 grounds of consciousness, right? So even when you see here, it's the same thing, yeah, which is, he talks about the first ground being Shipta, yeah, which is disturbed, restless, agitated, right? So that would be the mindful state, right? The full of stuff in our minds, right? So that is the Shipta state, the, totally stressed out, caught up in deadlines and caught up in traffic jams, right? So, and I always tell my students, it's not like, oh, this happens to other people, or we have to see our minds. Every day we see all these different states are there, right? We just have to be aware of the state of our minds. But every day we go through all of these states. Yeah, then there is the state of Muda, yeah, which is dullness, procrastination, laziness, right? Again, this also in a day we feel all of this, right? And then there is Vikshipta, which is distracted, right? So sometime we can focus, maybe we have a task at hand, right? Then we can focus. Otherwise, our minds just again are completely all over the place, right? And then there is Niruddha. Niruddha is the last state. Before that is Ekagrata. Yeah. So in many ways, when we talk about the yoga journey, we say the yoga journey is actually from Shipta to Ekagra. Yeah, that one-pointedness. So this again goes back to focus. Yeah, focus, attention, concentration. That is our practice. Yeah, so that we can eventually access that Niruddha state. So that state is a very high state. But these different states, we can be conscious of all of that and work towards Ekagrata. Yeah, one-pointed. Okay, so that is why for us, the tool as yoga practitioners, it begins with the body, right? But the understanding is that it is a path of awakening from the gross to the subtle to the causal. Yeah, from the Stula Sharira to the Sukshma Sharira to the Karna Sharira. Okay, so I'll go more into this later. So just giving a broad overview of asana practice and the depth of asana practice, right? From being a mere stretch. Yeah, so these are some of the practices and lines that we connect with about the stretch being from the shape of the body, right, to the state of the mind. So everything that we spoke about till now was about states of mind. Yeah, so that is what eventually the yoga practice is about. From stretch, we begin as a stretch, right? We begin with being aware of our leg, being aware of our hamstrings, being aware of our abdomen, right? We begin by being aware of the body. But then ultimately, it is about accessing a state of mind. And this is actually the key to our talk. I wanted to, there are so many beautiful perspectives to yoga practice, but I wanted to share this perspective in this talk. Yeah, so this is Shanti Mantra from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma, Amridam Gamaya. Yeah, so this is the stretch. It is to include all of our beautiful wisdom teachings into the stretch of the practice. Yeah, so that is how far the yoga practice can be stretched, from the mere stretch of the body to including our beautiful wisdom teachings. So when we talk about asat to sat in the previous verse, right, how do we do that, right? How does the practice move from there? Right, so we exist as the shape of the body, right? So somebody asks us, who are you, or what is our truth, right? It is all about the body, right? We look at ourselves in the mirror every morning, and then we define ourselves through the shape of our bodies, or through our height, or through our skin color, right? So we just limit our minds to the shape, right? And then when you look, that is a life thing. But when we look at even asana practice, we bring, like I said, the same mind outside the mat is the same mind we bring to the mat. So when we come to asana practice also, when we look at the body, it's all, we're keeping on measuring ourselves. Yeah, we keep judging ourselves, right? Can I touch my toes or not? No, I can't touch my toes. Oh, my body is so stiff. Can I stand on my head or not? Oh, I can't. The person next to me can stand, right? We're comparing, we're judging, and we limit ourselves so much to what our bodies are. Yeah, so we limit ourselves to the shape of the body. We limit ourselves to identities, right? I am this only. I am a mother. I am a father, or I have this particular position in a company, right? And we get so stuck on that. That's probably all true. But we have to know that we are all that, but we are also more than that. And all of this can just go away in a heartbeat. Yeah, in a second, in this current time of corporate insecurity, right? Everything can just shift in a moment. So to understand that, yes, we have a certain identity, but to not define ourselves through that identity, and to not really hold on to that as our only somebody asks you, okay, I am this. And then we have our stories, right? So that also all of us have, right? From childhood, what all happened to us. We never forget even a single thing, especially if it's a sad story, right? And then somebody asks you, how are you, or how's your life? And then we tell them every single bad thing that happened, right? Again, we become this either sad person, or we become this victim person, right? We have our stories, but we have to see them, right? Go back to that topic of awareness. We have to be aware, okay, this is a story that I'm telling this person, and I have told the story for the 100th time, right? Do I need to hold on to this story, right? Can I change my story? So this is our asat. Yeah, we keep superimposing all of this on ourselves. Yeah, the shape of our body, our job, our position, our titles, and what all happened to us, the victim or victor, whatever it is, right? And that becomes us, right? And we think that is us, right? So in Vedanta, they always give this very popular example of the rope and the snake, right? So a person is walking in a very dimly lit road, and he sees a rope, but in his mind, he maybe had a fear of snake when he was a child, right? So anything that looks a bit curly looks like a snake, right? And he decides that's a snake. And then all the anxiety and fright and everything that he's been carrying with him from childhood, all of that comes up, and he's so fearful, right? Till somebody comes and shines a torch and says, that's really not a snake, that's a rope. Right? So that is how we are. We keep, we have all these, okay, we think of ourselves as a victim, then we have all the depression that we can think of associated with that victimhood, right? We are just so caught up in that, until we go and maybe go to accidentally step into a Vedanta class, right? And then they say that this is not the self, right? There is another self, right? And shines the light, right? And then we realize, oh, so this was just a story, or this was just, identity, right? So to understand this, rope and snake is such a great example, right? Of how we superimpose our own fears, our own worries, our own anxieties on situation. Somebody may just say hello to us, but maybe in the past, somebody said hello to us and wanted something from us, right? So then we try to avoid that person, and then we get very anxious about what that person is going to ask us next, right? So we have to see that, right? Awareness. I keep going back to awareness. We have to see the functioning, or I always say more than functioning, it's the dysfunctioning of our minds, right? And how it so, like, we have just these patterns, right? These triggers, And we have to be aware of it, right? Otherwise, that becomes our truth. You say, I am like this only. I have this depression. I am somebody who's depressed, or I am somebody who has anger management issues, right? We define ourselves by all of this. Okay, so from tamas to jyoti, right? So again, that is the journey of the yoga practice and journey of the stretch and journey of human evolution as well, right? So the guna of tamas, some of the qualities of tamas. So tamas is generally associated with ignorance and darkness. Yeah, and jyoti is associated with the light. So this guna of tamas, some of its properties are it veils, right? Or it lends a shadow, right? And because of that, we really don't see clearly. Okay, so the same example, I'm going to go back to snake on rope, right? We don't see clearly, so the rope is seen as a snake. And we completely miss the essence of the rope, right? Because we never see the rope at all. We are only seeing the snake and we're reacting to the snake all the time, right? So one, it doesn't allow us to see clearly. And because of that, we completely miss the essence. Yeah, that is literally the story of our lives, right? So asana and pranayama, they really help us to clear and see, clear the delusion and see the snake illusion. Yeah. So in fact, even going back to the Yoga Sutras, there's a very powerful line. So in the sutras itself, when they talk about pranayama, there are about 5 sutras. So one of them, they say, Tata Shiyate Prakasha Avarnam. I think that's 2.52, which clearly says that through our pranayama practice, right, the veil is removed. Yeah, that clears, that covers the light. Yeah, that gets removed. Remember, Antakarna Shuddhi, that's what it does, right? It clears our inner instruments so that we can actually connect to the light. Yeah, so this all happens through our asana practice, through our pranayama practice. Okay, mrityorma amritam gamaya, so from mrityu to amrit. So as we connect to our sat, to our truth, right? Through our asana practice, through our pranayama practice, right? So when we understand that asana practice is not just about stretching muscles, but it's really about connecting to the essence. So my teacher Manoj Kaimal always says that, you know, this delusion of the shape of the body is so weak that it does not even stand the test of a microscope. You just put that under a microscope and that illusion of solidity of the body is dissolved. Because you will see molecules, atoms, subatoms, and eventually everything is energy. So that is really the reality, that we are energy, that we are Shakti. And that is what we're trying to connect with through our practice, right? And he always says, so when you lift your arm, right? Like I told you, this small mind of ours is always judging, right? So we're always thinking, is our arms going, you know, further than the next person's arms, right? How far back can, you know, our arms flex, right? So instead of thinking of all of that, connect to what moves our arms. Yeah, what is that energy? What is that intelligence that moves our arms, right? So that is what the yoga practice is about. And when we connect to that essence, when we connect to that sat, when we connect to that truth, right? That truth is beyond birth or death. Yeah, it has no birth, it has no death. It is only the physical body that has birth and death, right? When we die, that physical body gets dissolved back. And then we again, as long as we're identified with the mind and intellect and ego, we keep connecting back to that samsara, that cycle. But once we understand and once we connect to that sat, then we are released and we move from that death and cycle and birth cycle. Yeah, so even in asana, so in the Yoga Sutras, there is again another very beautiful verse when they talk. There are only 3 verses in the Yoga Sutras about asana, but one of them says, Prayatna Shaitalyam Ananta Samapatibhyam. Yeah, when effort ceases, right, we connect to that unboundedness, that ananta, that endlessness. Yeah, again, where there is no birth or death. Yeah, so that is the point to which our stretch can take us. Yeah, it begins with that physical stretch, yeah, that gross body stretch. But through that stretch, by focusing on the body, by focusing on the breath, right, it is a sort of a meditation practice. Yeah, it is asana is a moving meditation, but it has to be done with that attitude, right? As we move into the rhythm of the breath, as we move into that space of the body, right, then we connect to that space that is beyond time, which is beyond space, unboundedness. And that is the stretch of asana, right? So stretch asana to include beautiful wisdom teachings. So for that, our consciousness needs to be in such a state, right? We go in with our agitated mind that is judging, that is being harsh, that is being violent, right? Then we're not really going to receive anything. We'll only receive that. So that antakarna shuddhi is such an important practice, right? And that happens through yamas, niyamas, through our asana practice, through the pranayama practice, right? That is a very important part of the practice, right? Again, and to know that pranayama is not just when we sit and we breathe, right? Pranayama is part of even asana practice. We have to be aware of the breath. We can work with the breath. So to have that bird's eye view of yoga, yeah, not to box it as separate. Asana is something I do on my mat, pranayama is something I sit and do, right? Meditation is something else, right? To see, have that larger bird's eye view, to see how all of it is connected, interconnected, right? How one merges into the other. So ahimsa will merge into asana as well. Ahimsa will merge into pranayama as well. When we try to hold our breath beyond what is, comfortable for us or good for our body, right? Then we experience a negative impact of that, right? So even our breathing practices, even retention practices, they're all so important, right? We have to honor the body, and we have to honor what it can do at this point and not push it beyond what it is comfortable doing. So that is where ahimsa even comes in. So I'm just saying this to see how all of it is interconnected. Yeah, again, like I said, ahimsa is not just, okay, I'm vegetarian, so I practice ahimsa, right? It comes into everything that we do, everything that we think, all our internal chatter, our inner narrative, all of that, it comes in, right? When we go back to victimhood, what are we doing, right? The same victim stories, we're just hurting ourselves over and over again, right? So there's this very beautiful story of the Buddha, right? So how to, end suffering, everybody's dying, what is the point of, all of this? So Buddha gives this very beautiful story about how, yes, how do you feel when, an arrow is shot at you? And he says, yeah, I feel great pain, right? Yeah. So then he says, how do you feel when the second arrow is shot, third arrow is shot, 100th arrow is shot, 1000th arrow is shot? Oh, I feel even more pain, right? That's quite obvious, right? So he says the first arrow shot is the arrow that life brings us, right? So because of maybe our prarabdha karma, whatever, certain situations arise in our life. But then that second arrow, third arrow, fourth arrow, 100th arrow is all what we shoot on ourselves. Yeah, so that suffering we can ease and release, right? We don't have to keep hurting ourselves all the time, but that is all mind work, right? We have to be conscious, we have to be aware, we have to see the victim stories, we have to decide to release ourselves, we have to decide to create another story, right? And we have to understand that we have the power to create our story. That is in our power. Yeah, so that is ultimately it, our perspective. Okay, and that is the power that yoga practice gives us. The awareness of what our story is, and if it's not a good story, we can change our story, right? So that is the thing, right? So all of that has to happen to be able to access these higher states of consciousness, right? For dharana to happen, for dhyana to happen, for samadhi to happen, right? We cannot go in with that agitated judging, trying to get back at people, victimhood, all of that. We cannot go in with, enter those, access those states with that. Yeah, we work through the breath and then the bandha practice, right? So asana practice also has the bandha practice, which again allows us to draw scattered energy, all of this scattered. So we have to understand mind, body, breath, energy, all of it is connected. So you can think, okay, what is it? It's only the mind. Why can't my mind think all of these thoughts, right? But the more violent our thoughts are, the more, accusatory our thoughts are, right? All of that is energy going out, right? So we have to understand mind, energy is all connected. Right? So this drawing back, so that's what yoga practice does. By drawing our attention back, we draw our energy back as well. Yeah, and that is also through the bandhas, the Mula Bandha, Udyana Bandha, Jalandhara Bandha. We draw our attention back, we draw our energy back to the center, yeah, to the midline. And that stabilizes us, grounds us, right? Harmonizes us, balances us, right? Otherwise, our energy is all over the place. And the more imbalanced we are, the more stressed we are. And the more our actions also are like that, reflect our state of mental imbalance. Yeah, so the whole of yoga practice is that harmony, balance, right? Balance our energies, balance our breath, balance our bodies, right? And then all of that, when we have, done enough work on ourselves, right? We are able to receive these states of meditation. So one common example that, again, the teachers give is that of the ocean, right? So the surface of the ocean is always choppy. That's how our minds are, the surface of our minds, right? But we have to understand that it's not all there is to us. Okay, and unfortunately, a lot of people live on that surface level of the mind for many lifetimes, right? So we have to understand that that is just the surface. Okay, the surface is always choppy, the surface is always agitated, the surface is always triggered, right? So meditation is a sort of deep sea diving. Yeah, because beneath that surface of the ocean, right, there is tranquility, there is quietness, there is beauty. And similarly with our minds too, right? You just need to come to one yoga class, right? I always tell people, however you come in, you will always leave class feeling grounded, feeling centered, feeling calm. And it's the same mind. You just accessed a different level of the mind. Yeah, and to know that all of this is always there for us, but we have to do the work to access these states of mind. Yeah, so dimension. So, like I said in the Yoga Sutras, another verse, asana, the definition of asana, they give as stiram and sukham. Yeah, stiram, sukham, asana. So, stability and a state of ease, right? That is what your yoga practice brings you to, right? That state of ease, that state of balance, right? So, peace is never possible without ease, right? And then disease is a result again of not having any ease, right? So, you can see how all of this is tied in the mind, the body, our physical health. Again, there's no such thing as physical health because today it's all tied to our mental health, right? Stress is chronic stress is one of the leading causes of, illness today. And where does stress originate? It's all in the mind, right? So even today through science, right? Everybody knows that mind, body, breath, right? We bring in the dimension of energy as well. It's all connected. Yeah. And again, the meditation practice helps us to connect to our essence. Yeah, that's what it does, right? It goes through these layers and layers of all of this, and it allows us to connect to that beautiful space, right? Where we feel interconnected, right? There is, like in Vedanta, there's a beautiful saying, right? They say that the space, if you take the example of pots, they say the space inside the pot is not different from the space outside the pot, right? But we are so defined by the shape of the pot, right? So we have a fat pot, a tin pot, right? Our bodies are, a shapely pot, not so shapely pot, right? And again, we get stuck to those definitions, right? But we have to understand that that's all it is, right? It's just a demarcation, right? And through our yoga practice, even at the end of the yoga practice, after a beautiful yoga nidra session, right? Those strongly defined lines, right, that separate us from others, that separate us from the universe, that does not allow us to feel connected to others, that does not allow us to feel connected to the universe, all of that gets a bit relaxed. Yeah, they're not so rigid, they're not so strongly defined, and we begin to feel, right? We begin to understand that, the space inside of our bodies is not so different from the space outside of our bodies, right? And it's not so different from the space inside the next person's body as well, right? And we sense that interconnection with everyone else, and we sense that interconnection with the universe, because you don't feel your sharply demarcated lines so strongly after all. And that is what your yoga practice gives you, that ability to feel your oneness with the universe and interconnection with everybody else as well. Right? So I want to end my talk with this. I think I have taken a lot of time with my talk. And I just want to go back to Prime Minister Modi, right? One of his favorite phrases is Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. And while generally we take it as, the world is one global family. I mean, if you just split the words as well, there's a very beautiful meaning, to it about Deva being the light, right? We think of Deva as the light, right? It is that one universal light, right? And if you take Vasu, it's that which resides. Yeah, that light which resides in each one of us, right, is just the spark of that universal light. Yeah, so we are all connected with through the light, right? So we are always differentiating ourselves based on, race and passport and religion and color of the skin, right? But if we can connect to each other, understanding that that one light is what lights each one of us, right? Then we maybe, the world would just be a more peaceful place. All right. So yoga is not something that you do. Yoga is a state of mind. Yeah, you be yoga. And these are just some information if anybody wants to stay connected, right? It's always there. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And
okay, Brahma is in the audience panel. Brahma, you can ask the question. Brahma, you can unmute and ask your question.
Actually, frankly speaking, I have no question at all. I just wanted to appreciate her, and see, I just like that I came to this house. Like, what is they going to say about this stretch and all? But on hearing her speech, it is really what to say. It is a very wonderful, wonderful. Actually, whatever she experiences, she had spoken. That is what I just wanted to tell her. The title should have been beyond the stretch of yoga. Actually, yoga is always seen as an exercise nowadays. Now she had taken it to the next level where it is beyond the exercise. And really, I just want to express my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to Shailaja ma'am. That's it. Thank you.
thank you so much. So glad that it connected.
Thank you, Brahma. So we'll wait for actually most questions to come up. While actually you were explaining in the beginning that actually there are many types of yoga are there, not exactly as per the traditional methods, but by people are marketing it in different ways. As you had written over there, goat yoga, beer yoga, many
That's
types.
just marketing. It's just marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think actually there is a dire need of setting standards to keep
Absolutely.
it pure actually that is my question.
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, but there are already schools that or institutes that like Yoga Alliance and all that do have some certification, but I really think there should be more. Yeah, I mean, I think yoga should not be allowed to just be used with anything. Yeah, that I think is the key, that you cannot just use the term yoga or the word yoga with just anything you want to sell.
Right. I'm living in Sydney, in Australia, and even to be a physical trainer in a gym or something, you need certifications. For a chiropractor, for any such things, actually, you need to have certifications, and you need to be the person that has the right to do it. But when it comes to yoga, I don't think actually so many things are there. So such things of certification and all, shouldn't it be mandatory so that we are dealing with our body? The wrong way of stretching and everything can hurt our body also. Maybe prolonged muscle damages can be.
Yeah, I agree. But there are certifications, there are lots of teacher training programs. Every big school in India and every small school all over the world also has, yoga teacher certification. And I think in most cities, you can't teach unless you're a certified teacher. So there are all those standards coming in, but even then you have to see where that certification comes from. Right? I mean, it's not just about a certificate, right? Anybody, you can do some 5 hours and get a certificate also. So that has become the problem now. The problem is not that we don't have certification. The problem is, where is the certification coming from? Right? So now online yoga also has become so popular. So you don't even have to listen, like you can just do some random thing and get a certificate. So there is no lack of certificates. The lack is, I think you have to control the certification. Like, who is giving those certificates out, right? And I think the public also should get wise. right? So they have to see, right? I always say, you have to suss your teacher out. You cannot just go to anybody who's giving you the cheapest class, or, you have to look for quality, right? You have to see what is it, the work that your teacher has done, right? You have to see what is it that they're teaching. So I always put a lot of onus on the student as well. You have to do some research, like how we want to go to a doctor, right? We do research, right? We ask for credentials, right? People will say, we ask somebody, do you have been there, right? We get second opinion. So I feel the public has to do some research and, not just go for the cheapest thing available, or just, any fly by night kind of certification, right? So you have to know, ask your teacher, right? How many hours did you, there's 200 hours, 500 hours. There's a lot of steps in certification to see where that certificate comes from and the work that went into getting that certification.
The government should actually decide on the certifications that are valid and should insist that these certifications are required to do or become a yoga trainer or a teacher, isn't it?
Yeah, but there is a lot of that now. I mean, I'm sure even in Sydney, you can't just open a yoga studio, without having a valid certification. But, like, how many governments can control also, right? Like, you talk about Indian governments, they can put in, but, all over the world, this is a problem, right? So all over the world, people have to awaken.
Actually, in the Indian government, Ayush Ministry is there, Shailaja ji, which
Correct.
has put forward this certification.
Correct.
for
Yeah,
yoga.
but I'm saying Ayush is for India. Like, I'm saying all over the world, this is an issue, right? So, I mean, how many governments are you going to talk to?
Very true.
Correct. Vidyaji, actually, you can cut in actually whenever you have a question.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the first questions that I had in mind, Shailaja ji, what got you turned towards yoga? What is it that inspired you to take up yoga and, in such a magnificent fashion?
So, like I told you, my pet topic is chronic stress. So there was a point in my life when I felt very stressed out, and coming from India, right, having awareness of yoga, so I should get these headaches. And my father was a doctor, so he would always tell me, there's nothing wrong with you, right? You have to learn to manage your stress. And so even from college, I was somehow always drawn. I always knew the answers were in yoga and meditation, right? All of those practices. Again, yoga and meditation should not be used as separate words, but I always knew the answers were there. So I've been, even from college, I would, do meditation classes. So I've always been attracted to it. And I've always been a very physically oriented person, as in I played badminton, right through my childhood, at college level, university level, even state level. So I think the asana practice really appealed to me because it combined both, right? And I could work my body as well, and through my body I could access these beautiful states that were never accessible to me otherwise. So after my first asana class, it was such an aha moment. I just felt so good, and I knew that the only way to keep feeling good was to keep my practice going, and I haven't stopped since then. Right? It's been some 24. I started when my older son was 6 months. I mean, the asana practice. I went for meditation and pranayama classes even earlier. But asana practice, I started only when I was, say, 26, when my son is 24 now. So 24 years. From that first class, I never stopped. Because the feeling, that well-being that you feel when you're, like I said, it, harmonizes your energy, it balances your mind, it makes you feel grounded, centered. These are all states I never felt before. Right? And I knew the only way to access it is through my practice. And I was very blessed. I had great teachers, right? I started off as a student, right, in Coimbatore with Mataji and at Swami Satchidananda's ashram called Integral Yoga. And I met a beautiful lady there who encouraged me to become a teacher. And then when I came to Malaysia also, I think you find what you seek. So my teacher here, Manoj Kaimal, he's so brilliant as well, right? He was the one who actually brought out so much of embodying asana practice with philosophy, literally, right? You live philosophy through your asana practice. So it just was exactly what I was seeking. So I just loved it. And, I just I haven't stopped. Like I said, I feel these are lifetime practices. It's not a fad. Oh, I did it for 2 weeks and, I feel great, so I don't need to do it anymore, right? It's a consistent evolution that we want. There are challenges in our life along the way, and we need an anchor. And to me, my yoga practice is my anchor.
Absolutely, Shailaja ji. We can feel that, we are able to sense that passion within you is because of your experience. You are able to.
And that's the beauty of yoga. So other people might get very upset with me, but I'm going to say that yoga practice is the greatest practice because it is an experiential practice, right? I always say, I mean, again, now doctors will get upset with me. I'll say, your doctor will tell you to relax. But if you ask him how to relax, he doesn't know. Right? But to me, your yoga practice is the greatest way. It gives you so many ways through which you can relax by stretching and releasing your body, by using your breath, right? Today's science is verifying all of this. Studies are going on in all the good schools, right? At Harvard Medical School. All of these places have evidence about the importance of your breath and how your breath can bring down your blood pressure, how your breath can calm you down, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. So, like, so many dimensions through which your yoga nidra session, right, where you at the end of it, where you're so zen and calm. So to me, like, this is all so important. Like, you have to be, actually, nobody teaches us this. This should be like school syllabus or college syllabus, right? Because the greatest challenge we face is our own mind, and nobody tells us how to deal with it, right? As a result of which, why everybody is dying by droves by chronic stress, right? But yoga, you experience. Relaxation is not a word, you feel it, right? When you stretch deeply and you just relax your muscles, you feel that relaxation in every core of your being, in every cell of your being, you feel it. So beauty of yoga is, we say peace, feel peace. What is peace, right? But then when you watch your breath, you work with your breath at the end of your breath, right? When your breath is almost so subtle, almost like you're not breathing, if you sense your mind is in such a stable state, right? There's absolutely no thought. Like I said, mind, body, breath, energy, everything is connected. You hold your breath, your mind is still, right? So you feel states which is not accessible otherwise. Otherwise, it's all just, we can all give sermons on, being peaceful and being calm and, but you have to feel it. And through your yoga practice, you can feel all of these most important things in your life. You learn how to de-stress, you learn how to manage your stress, you learn how to access states of harmony and balance and, peace. Okay, all of which I think all of us are seeking.
Absolutely. And we have Parvati here. Parvati, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, these days, what I see is, as far as I know, spiritual part is also involved in yoga. Okay, now what I see is in the centers is mostly that part is totally cut off. Actually, when you're teaching, it's not about only the positions and all, right? So you need to also give the knowledge of yoga and why each thing has to be explained properly. I don't think these days people are doing that. Even I feel in the schools, kids are doing, on a world yoga day, they do something and leave. But in the schools also, that like you have a PT classes, physical education classes, I feel they should also have a one day, in a week to have this session, and also tell them the behind stories, and you need to educate them about yoga, why they should do, how it originated, the each positions, how it helps them. That in-depth education is not given, is what I feel. I had gone for a few classes, but then I got bored in the first few things, because it was more about they ask you to do some positions and they do, and then just go. Maybe that education part and getting that spiritual thing is not involved. I think initial days it was more to do with spiritual, and to get your body and all those things calm and how to do that, but that control is not there. What is your opinion on that? That's my feeling.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what this whole talk was about as well, right? To show people that, at least people listening, that, the stretch of yoga is not just about the body or not about a shape, right? But it is eventually about a state of mind which allows us to access these higher states of consciousness. So I completely agree. I mean, I learned through the grace of a very good teacher. So I agree that teachers, we have to have such good teachers. And I think we should all ask maybe, like schools and all of that. I don't know who manages it, but I agree that more information should be given. And it's not just about touching your toes or standing on your head and all of that. With that, that is also good. But with that, we should also give knowledge about, the essence of yoga and, why we really do it. So I agree with you that there is a lot more that needs to be done. But I'm grateful that at least now children are familiar with the term yoga. Like I, for example, I grew up in India. I went to school in Coimbatore, school, college, all of which I have no exposure to yoga at all. Right. So I sought it on my own. Right. So at least I'm happy that children know the word yoga and they will do some poses related to yoga. So I think we're taking baby steps in that direction. But yes, a lot more could be done.
Thank you. And how did it help you, the journey of yoga in your personal life? I think that's most important for the life which all of us are dealing is with stress and all. And I think how did it help you that yoga, and how did it calm your mind or body? How what's the change you see after you being completely into yoga?
I think you said it yourself, right? Calm the mind and the body. So I always tell my sons also, I have 2 sons. So I always tell them being calm is a superpower, right? So that is what even in our scriptures, whether it is whether we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, right? One of the main lines in that is, right? Samatvam yoga uchyate, right? That ability to stay calm, the ability to stay grounded, to be balanced, to be even, right? Even-mindedness is always a virtue, something that we seek. Right. And then even if you look at the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, right, he talks about these qualities that you have to practice, right, which is Maitri, Mudita, Karuna, and Upekshanam. So Upekshanam is one of my favorite qualities, right, which again translates into that, right, that ability to stay calm in the midst of, summer and winter and profit and loss, all of that. Right. So that is our evolution as human beings to be in that place. That's what we're all striving for, not to be caught up in what they call raga and dvesha. Yeah, either to be running behind, like I said, the mind is like that. It just runs behind attractions or runs away from what it doesn't like, right? Even though it may be good for it. So that is the nature of the mind. So to have that Buddhi Yukta practice where we can rein in the mind, and that way our mind gets stabilized, and the more stabilized we are, the more accessible these states of being calm, of being peaceful, right? Clarity comes in. That's another great word. Right? There's no confusion. Like when we are younger and we are not really sure about ourselves, right? All the time we are second guessing ourselves and confused about everything and spend hours pondering about nothing really that, helps us. So as more you delve into your practice, the more clarity, it becomes a state of mind. And, you're quite clear about your thoughts and what your life is about. And there's not so much confusion or the need to, you become so internalized, right? You're dependent less on other people and other things to make you happy. Your happiness is your own internal matter. I mean, to me, my practice is everything. Just happier.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate. You need to be happy. That's the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
And that sums up when you're happy and you make the people around you also happy.
Correct. Right. And the more dependent we are on the world, the more we are on the whims and fancies of other people and other objects or positions. Right. So the more internalized we are, the more we are connected to our own inner self. Right. Then the less we are dependent on the world and other people and their behaviors and their attitudes and their whims and fancies, and the happier we are. We can't control other people. Right. And the more we're dependent on them, the more it's like just free fall. Right? So the more you are you are connected to your own inner self, right? Your practice is what connects you to your inner self, right? The more you're connected to your own inner self, then the less dependent you are on other people, and you can manage your own mind. Otherwise, we're waiting for other people to tell us things, waiting for validation from the world, waiting for somebody to say something nice, right? If we don't, that person doesn't say it for maybe not some personal reason also, then, we go to the depths of depression because of that, right? All that is so unnecessary.
Yes. Another question for myself as well as for the audience sake. there are many types of yogas, not the beer yoga and the goat yoga that you mentioned in the beginning, but there are other types that we see in general, like when we read and all that. There is Kriya Yoga, for example. There is Hatha Yoga, and in our traditional systems itself. The question is, like, how they are different. What are the different streams of yoga that we have?
Yeah, so all these things are seemingly different, but we must see the unity in that, as in the end point is the same. Yeah, so paths are different, right? The end is the same. Yeah, so that we must understand. So some people may use, so in Hatha Yoga, the body is the key, right? We use the body, right, through asana practice, through bandhas, through mudras, through pranayama, right? We have so many of those techniques, right? So it is like you see, like I said, my samskaras and vasanas are, quite physically oriented. So this suited me. Right? For some other people, maybe, they like the intellectual path, like, Jnana Yoga. So then maybe another path is more suited, right? Some other persons might be more connected to their heart and they would want to serve and they would want to be more involved in, changing the world, doing good to the world, right? Then maybe the Karma Yoga path is more. So, and some people are just naturally, devotion, like I always say, that's a grace, right? To have the bhakti, right? So that is such a grace. So again, so we are all, the thing to know is we are all a certain way, right? And to know what it is that moves us, right? And follow that. And that's the greatness of our religion as well, right? That they're not saying that everybody has to do the same thing. They make allowances for the fact that human beings are wired differently, right? Our previous incarnations, whatever, we are all born with different samskaras and vasanas, right? And we have to honor that. Right? So you ask somebody who's intellectually oriented to go and do something else, it may not work so. They might do it, but they don't get that fulfillment in that. So everybody has to follow their own path, right? There is no one path or one size that fits all, right? You have to know yourself and you have to follow the path that moves you, what is right for you. So that is why I say that self-knowledge, self-awareness is so key. Right? We have to understand, right, what moves us, what triggers us, what makes us happy, what inspires us, right? And then our path, to me, the practice is to be authentic to yourself. And then the path opens to you. The universe requires us to be authentic. Then naturally, like you don't have to go searching for it. It just comes to you. But honor yourself, honor your path, honor your gifts, honor your personality and your traits, and follow that. So all of these different paths are correct. All of these different paths are good, right? And all of them, the end point is the same. Okay, it's all about ultimately samadhi and self-realization, and in different names that is explained, nirvana. Right? So it is like, there's again another very beautiful phrase that our Prime Minister Modi, I think, used recently. I think Ekam Sat. Yeah, the truth is one. Yeah. So to understand, like I said, we have to have that broad perspective. Yeah, that bird's eye view. Right? Otherwise, we get into this, my toy is better than your toy, my father is better than your father, right? My path is greater than your path. Right? So that is that small, limited perspective when we have. Right? When we have that broader view and that broader perspective to life and yoga and what it is that we're trying to achieve, right? Then we understand and value everybody's path. So it's all good and it's all true, but just stick to it and do it. Right? Practice is the key, right? We can all philosophize, right? Do PhDs, right? But the minute to minute, I say yoga practice is a minute to minute practice, right? It's in the choices that we make, in what we choose to do, in being able to shift our perspective to a more positive perspective, right? It's a minute to minute practice.
Absolutely. Vidyaji, you have any question?
Yeah, actually, it's like it's a question because of an experience that I've had, Shailaji. It's the last, I think, 10-12 years, I've been focusing more on, Surya Namaskar and a few other asanas. So in around 2008, 2009, I was going through a very bad period of time. At the same time, my health also, I had a very bad case of PCOD. When I tried Ayurveda and there was a little bit of homeo and all that, but what actually helped me was yoga. So over time, after doing Surya Namaskar, it's become okay. I mean, like I've come out of it without even realizing that I've come out of it, and I continue to do that. So I just wanted to know, like, if there would be certain asanas which you would suggest, whether it is for men or women, like if you have identified asanas which could be, for like specific ailments, health problems. Like for me, I found Surya Namaskar to be beneficial. If you could just elaborate a little on that, what was the reason why this thing got rectified, this condition got rectified?
See, I have to say that this is a separate branch called yoga therapy, yeah, where they actually deal with particular illnesses. Like a doctor, you go there, you say this, right? So I don't want to comment too much on that because I have not done a yoga therapy course. But from my understanding is that asana practice just lifts everything. Yeah. So even if you have a bad back, depending on your back problem, of course, right? It also helps you from getting problems. It keeps you in good health. Yeah. So we don't realize it, but we really abuse our bodies, like in today's time, right, where everything is online and our spines are always rounded, right, looking over laptops or hunched over, our workspaces at home as well, right? We don't, how many of us actually stand up? How many of us actually, do some spinal extension because our spine is rounded always? How many of us do some twists to release the spine, to open the shoulders, right? We actually pay no attention to our bodies, right, till we have a problem. So to me, all asanas are important, right? So when we do back bends, right, we strengthen the back, we keep the spine flexible, right? Then where there are so many positions that we can do to keep the shoulder joints moving, right? It works all our joints, our hip joints, right? So many people tell me I can't sit cross-legged on the floor, right? That is because for years of no use, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. So everything, we have to understand that everything, we have to start honoring our bodies. Yeah. So again, there is some, some people who will say that, pay no attention to your bodies. That's not correct, right? Our body is our vehicle, right? So B.K. Iyengar has this very beautiful saying, yeah, that body is my temple and asanas are my prayer. Yeah, so that is how important the body is. We have to value our bodies because, like, again, some great guru said, if you have intense stomach pain, right, you're not going to be able to focus on anything else. And, samadhi and all of that is a far cry. Yeah, so we have to understand that we need, that is why asanas were also devised. Maybe because our sages realized that they need to keep their bodies in good connection, right, in functioning well. So asanas are very important to keep the bodies functioning well, right? And I always say, as we age, it becomes even more important. So many people tell me, oh, I should have started as a child, now it's too. I'll say it's even more important as we age. Because when we are young, somehow good health will take us. But as we grow older, right, everything gets stiff. Knee pain will come in, back pain will come in. When do we start feeling old? When do we start feeling our age? Right? When we are restricted and we cannot do the things that we used to do, or we have pain and discomfort in doing the things that we once could. Right? So to me, I always tell people yoga is the best anti-aging. Instead of spending thousands of ringgit or dollars on creams and all of that, right? Do your yoga practice. If you do an inversion, it brings so much blood flow to your face, right? It brings your face alive. It keeps your brain in good health, right? So as we grow older, even if you're just interested in good brain health, mental health, and physical health, yoga practice contributes immensely to that. Yeah, so when, it just works everything. It keeps your hamstring. Like a lot of the back pain is because of tight hamstrings. So we don't realize it. We just keep thinking we have a problem with the back, but the problem could be something else. So when you do your yoga practice, a wholesome practice, right? So that is what I would recommend. If we just focus on one thing, it becomes a very lopsided practice, right? Because I say it's like even a small toe, if it has a cut, right? We feel it, right? Every part of our body is important. Yeah, so similarly, even when we do asana practice, we have to incorporate everything that helps all aspects of our body. We have to do forward bends, we have to do back bends, we have to do inversions, we have to do twists, right? We have to do balance, right? As we grow older, we lose our ability to balance, right? That's why so many old people, end up with falls. Right. So again, there are so many poses in yoga that help with balance, right? The Vrikshasana, the tree pose, right? Natarajasana, the dances pose, so many poses that help enhance your balance, right? Keep your cerebellum, working well. So we have to understand that everything is necessary. Yeah. All of our asanas are great. Right. So if you can't do everything every day, I would always recommend like if you see the Shivananda system or you see the integral yoga system where I studied, they have a practice, say for 40-minute practice where everything is covered, right? They'll start with an inversion, then you'll do lateral stretches like the triangle or Parsvakonasana, and then they will do, back bends, they will do forward bends, wind up with twists, do some arm balance. So all of it is good because all parts of our body are important. No one part is more important or less important than the other. Yeah, so I would recommend a well-rounded practice where you do little bit of everything every day. Yeah, and that keeps us in good health without, succumbing to, problems as well. Yeah, and I just want to emphasize this. It is important to practice. Yeah, it is important to do it. Like I said, most people talk a lot about a lot of things. Yeah, but we don't. Discipline is the key, which is why the very first verse is Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Right in the scriptures, they tell you yoga is a discipline. It is not a fad. For most people, it is just, okay, I'll try it for a while and, just give up on it after a while. Okay, my leg pains. So it is a discipline. We have to discipline the mind. Like I said, that buddhi has to be able to rein in the mind because the mind is very spoiled and the mind has no control. Yeah, so we have to rein in the mind and we have to do it regularly, and then we will feel the benefit of the practice. So even in the Yoga Sutras, right? So Maharishi Patanjali says when, about yoga practice, right? He says, Dirga Kala, Satu Dirga Kala Nairantarya. It has to be done over a long period of time and continuously. Satkara, with respect. Asevita, right? To serve. So these are all the qualities that come in, right? So even when we go into our practice, we have to approach our practice with respect. Yeah, we have to value the practice, right? It's not just some, okay, I'll just do it with some, like beer yoga kind of thing, right? So this all is given in the scriptures, yeah, about how we approach the practice. When will the practice serve us, right? When we serve the practice, right? When we do it correctly, then we get the benefit of the practice. But definitely the mention is there of long-term and continuous practice, right? So if anybody is listening, I would only encourage you, take it up as a lifetime practice. Yeah, don't do it for 10 days and give it up. Oh, I did yoga 5 years ago and I did it for 2 weeks, right? You won't feel the benefit. Like every day we get junk, like from morning to evening, stress piles up. So I tell people, right, we have to learn to release it. And it is through our yoga practice that we release all of this, right? By just doing a twist. Twists are so beautiful, right? They help you to release all the toxicity that builds up in the spine, right? Toxicity is not just physical toxicity. Everyday stress builds up, right? All of that sits in our body, doesn't go anywhere else. And to me, the easiest way to ease your body and mind is through your practice, through deep stretching, through deep breathing, right? That helps you. It's like having a bath every day to, wash off the dirt, right? Every day stresses the dirt that we build into our systems. And we need to find a way to release it. And to me, the yoga practice is the best way to do it. So we have to practice it as part of our life, like how we brush our teeth, like how we bathe. Yoga practice has to be a part of our everyday life. Yeah, and don't just talk about it, do it.
Yes, I think I'll ask you the final question and then we can wrap it up. You have mentioned about our Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually making it. The last one was quite fabulous. 180 countries participated together on the Yoga Day. And how do you see the changes in the current regime that has put its efforts on propagating yoga and actually more popularizing it? As a yoga teacher, actually, how do you see it?
Yeah, like for one, I already said when I grew up in school and college in Coimbatore in India, right, I never did any yoga. So I think that has changed in a big way. And I think last year or the year before that, my own university where I went to university, they invited me to speak there, right? Which, like I said, when I studied there, I never had any access to yoga at that time. So I think that has changed in a big way. I used to feel very bad. Like my sister is in America, in Austin, and her kids, even in kindergarten would be doing yoga in school, right? But then kids growing up in India, right, would have no access to it. So I would feel very bad about that. So now I'm really happy that yoga is become so widely available, right? So kids, whether they have a choice or not, right, they're at least exposed to it. I'm not saying everybody's going to go on and become yoga teachers and all of that, but at least they grow up knowing about yoga, right? These are actually our most important exports, right? Like I say, when you leave India and go, the two things that people ask you about, like when you meet people abroad, right, one is yoga and the other is Ayurveda, and most Indians are clueless about both. Right? It is a very small section that actually knows or can talk intelligently about all of this, right? Like I'm one example. I'm not talking about other people. I myself was clueless when I left, which is why I know, right, how lacking my own education was. Yeah, so I think that is a great thing that has come about. The fact that children are exposed to yoga, it's not an alien word. They know something about it. They can at least strike a pose, if nothing else, if somebody asks them about yoga. I think that is a great thing. And then having this one day as International Yoga Day, I think that has really become like a pivotal point, right? So wherever, which part of the world you are, right, that one day, all yoga teachers, right, are galvanized to do something, yeah, on that day. So like even say I'm here, right, in Malaysia, and the Indian High Commission had a fabulous event, yeah, that was done in one of the most iconic places in Malaysia, the Batu Caves. And that was really a sight to see and a great energy to be part of. So I'm sure, events like this encourage the spread of yoga. Even if people had just come for, okay, let me see what this is about, right? I'm sure they went away, with a greater understanding and a greater feeling. That's what yoga does, right? It's not just a factual understanding. You feel some shifts in you, right? And you say, okay, I want to do that again. Right. So I think this International Yoga Day has given a focus point throughout the world, wherever you may be. Right. In fact, today, this morning, my studio, right, we organized an International Yoga Day event in the park nearby. And I got my children. I have like some kids, about 20-25 kids who have been with me for a while. So they performed. So it just gives an opportunity to people to celebrate yoga, right? During the COVID, there were like hundreds of online events that went on, right? So it just made yoga so much more accessible, so much gave people a rallying point, yeah, where you could, do some event. There was some reason to, propagate yoga. So I think that was a great thing that Prime Minister Narendra Modi did by introducing International Yoga Day, or like proposing that to the UN, and they accepted it. And I think it has really galvanized, the yoga spread. Like I think I heard somebody say it's become a global movement, right? Today, everywhere, whether Times Square or streets of Shanghai, like even China, people, places like China, yoga has become so popular, right? And even in the Middle East, where you thought, yoga would never enter, but even there, right, there's so much of yoga happening there. So definitely the new government has, not so new government now, second term ending, right, has galvanized yoga and really given a big boost. Yeah, given a big, they have honored yoga, I would say. Yeah, given a like made it the crown jewel, of India, and it's such a great pride for us yoga practitioners and yoga teachers to be associated with that.
Ravi, before you end, I have actually two questions. I'm really sorry, Shailaja ji. One is like, when you start your yoga practice for your students, do you start it with a prayer? Do you start any specific prayer, from the Yoga Sutras, or any other prayer that you follow? And the second question is, your second book, when is it coming out?
Okay, I'll start with the second question first. I'm really hoping it comes out by the end of the year. It's not in my hands because it's like giving your baby away, right? Once you give it to the, publishers, then it's really out of your hands. But I'm really hoping that it comes out by the end of the year. And the yoga practice as such, like the style that I practice, the focus is very much on the mind. Yeah, on the mental aspect of it. So we don't have a prayer per se, but if you ask my teacher, he'll say the practice itself is the prayer. Yeah, so when we first sit, right, the first thing we do is not start with postures, but work with the mind. Yeah, so it's called Manasa Yoga. So the name only, the focus is the mind. Yeah, Manas. So the first thing I would ask my students is really to be aware of their mind. Yeah, where is the mind, right? What is the mind obsessing about? What is the mind focused on? To be able to objectively observe the mind from a space of non-judgmental awareness, right? To be able to really lift yourself. So if you came in, oh, I have this deadline to meet, I have this place to go to, right? You're caught up with it. But when you can actually lift yourself from it and just look at your mind in a very detached manner, right? That gives you some space between you and whatever you were obsessing about. Right? And that itself gives you a relief from stress. Yeah, so that is how we start the class, by asking students to really be aware of their mind in a very, very objective manner. And then to learn to direct the mind, because ultimately all of it is working with our minds. Right? So you become conscious of your attention and you work with your attention. So even as I direct, so I take them through the body first, right? So gross to the subtle to the causal, right? That is the whole journey of yoga practice. So we first direct the attention to the gross body. Yeah, so you become aware of your feet, you become aware of your, sit bones, you become aware of your spine, and you have to make sure that your attention in all of this, right? So that's where pratyahara comes in. Right? So the minute you notice that you're thinking about something else, you bring your attention back. Yeah, so that Yoga Sutra philosophy is what we bring into class. Yeah, pratyahara, dharana, right? And then we end, we do some pranayama practice. And then that pranayama practice leads us to a meditative state. Yeah, so that is how we begin the class. But definitely they come in being aware of, understanding that the mind is the key, right? To at least, okay, I'm distracted, but at least to understand that you're distracted. Yeah, so at least we become more conscious beings, conscious of the mind and where it is and where it is not. Yeah, so that is how we start. But with my kids' class, I always end with a beautiful, I teach them as many chants as I can. We do the Gayatri Mantra, we do the Sahana Bhavatu, and then, we do Purnamada, Purnam. So I just, that is just my way of just teaching the kids, our mantras and our traditions and teaching. So the kids' class, we do Om chanting. So even in the adults' class, we do the Pranayama, we do some Om chanting, we do all of that.
Right. Thank you,
Well,
Shailaja.
happy?
Very insightful. Yes, very. And we
Thank
would
you
like
so
to
much for inviting me.
how did you find the session, Shailaja ji?
Wonderful. I mean, this is my bliss, right? The opportunity to share, right? So it's this is how I have grown also organically, right? I was a student and practitioner, and then I found it so great. Then, I was nudged along the way. Like I said, right? You just remain true to your path, right? My teacher asked me to do a teacher training program. And then, back in Malaysia, I found this wonderful teacher. So life happened to me. And, I just keep wanting to spread the joy, right? I wrote the book because of that as well, right? Because I have so many of these thoughts in my head and I want to share that with everybody. And then I started speaking also because of that, because it gave me an opportunity to access more people. So this is what I love to do and what, brings me alive. So I am so happy to do that. So thank you so much, really. And you both have been wonderful to interact with.
Thank you for being with us.
Yes.
It was a wonderful session. And actually, it was so knowledgeable. Actually, enlightening, I would say, that we touched about actually the actual practice, different versions of it. We even talked about actually in the reality what is happening on the ground. So many things. Actually, it has been a wonderful session. Thank you for being with us.
Satyameva Jayate Nandritam सत्येन पन्था विततो देवयानः येनाक्रमन्त्यर्षयो ह्याप्तकामा यत्र तत्सत्यस्य परमं निधानम्. Truth alone triumphs, not falsehood. Through truth, the divine path is spread out. Through this path, the sages who have conquered their desires completely attain the supreme treasure of truth.